If you want a long career in the pro wrestling business, you better be ready to reinvent yourself. No one can keep a character going forever, and eventually the crowd will turn on you. It's why the best of the best have always evolved as time has ticked forward, realizing that staying ahead of the curve is essential, otherwise you get left in the past. While when done right these are always incredible, they're nothing compared to the real changes the humans behind the performers have gone through in order to turn their actual lives around. We all understand how much individuals can struggle, and to do that on a public stage but still come out better on the other side is as comforting as it is inspiring. I'm Simon from WhatCulture, and this is 10 mind-blowing real-life wrestling reinventions. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to stay notified. Ding, ding, done. Number 10, Sting. In the late 90s, Sting went through many changes. The one we're all used to was, of course, how he morphed from a cool surfer dude with spiky hair into the dark outcast Crow character who would haunt the NWO from the rafters. It was one of the best gimmicks WCW ever had and turned Sting into one of the most popular guys in the company. Unfortunately, around this time, Steve Borden, the man behind the makeup, was struggling with a personal battle as drugs and alcohol threatened to derail his success he was having on screen. It's a period Sting has talked about time and time again in interviews. However, much like Ted DiBiase or Shawn Michaels, he experienced a complete change when he did indeed have a spiritual and religious awakening which encouraged him to do a 180. Becoming a born-again Christian in 1998, Sting credits this for saving his life, marriage and career. A heartwarming story given how well liked he was backstage. Sting was able to carve himself a new path and a new chance. Number 9, Matt Hardy. It's been a long road back to WWE for Matt Hardy following his departure from the organisation in 2010. Sent home from a European tour for undisclosed reasons in September, he was officially gone from the company the following month after a series of unsettling YouTube interviews in which he appeared to be struggling due to drugs and alcohol. Moving to TNA at the conclusion of his non-compete clause, he appeared tired and disinterested in his run as Cold Blood Matt Hardy, with his brief run ending in further turmoil after he crashed his car into a tree whilst driving under the influence. Entering WWE-sponsored rehab in the aftermath was largely unsuccessful, and at one stage, it seems as if version 1 wasn't ever going to be able to find himself again. Arrested multiple times for drug-related charges, Hardy was kicked out of the program for failing to remain clean, then later forced future wife Rebby Sky to call police due to being strung out on pills and needing help. Miraculously, this appeared to represent rock bottom form Matt. A 2013 run with the Scum stable in Ring of Honor triggered a corrective renaissance that ultimately led him back to TNA and eventually the broken persona that would become one of 2016's biggest success stories. Now a father and a polished WWE veteran, his return to relevance has been truly remarkable and, as said, a true example as to what can be achieved. Number 8, William Regal. I genuinely think William Regal is my hero. A man that has gone through so much but came out the other side as one of the most respected and knowledgeable people throughout all of wrestling. He's a beacon of information and a beacon of hope. It wasn't always so happy though. Throughout the 1990s, Regal fell into pills and alcohol that would spark incidents that ultimately landed him in jail. A move to WWE in 1998 didn't initially curb his habits, with a painkiller addiction initially keeping him off TV until an autumn reappearance as the real man's man. Here, Regal still wasn't able to balance himself out, however, even with the best of intentions, and eventually WWE saw him as a lost cause and he was let go in early 1999. When he came back in 2000 though, things had changed. Clearly enjoying a new lease on life, Regal kept his slate clean for the better part of a decade and now he's one of the most important cogs in the WWE world. Number 7, Sean Waltman. If you listen to Sean Waltman's podcast, you know how open he is about his past, and that's because X-Pac survived 2 decades of drug and alcohol abuse, having flown dangerously close to the wind throughout his runs with WCW, WWE and TNA, and on the indies. The former 1-2-3 Kid was into that side of pro wrestling in the mid-90s, particularly alongside click buddies Shawn Michaels and Scott Hall. Despite keeping employment with major organisations between 1993 and 2002, Waltman was unravelling by the time of his summer release from WWE and later admitted to being on drugs immediately before a match against AJ Styles during the early days of TNA. Following a toxic relationship with the late Chyna that infamously led to the release of a sex tape, his problems would worsen during time spent in Mexico alongside new girlfriend Alicia Ryan Shamrock Webb. Drinking heavily due to an anti-marijuana settlement from his employers in AAA, a row between the two escalated to such an extent that Waltman struck her, knocking her clean across the room in sight of her young son. Enslaved by his guilt, he attempted to commit suicide by overdosing on Valium and rum and hanging himself with a garden hose. Though that attempt failed, he later continued to battle his addictions with the help of repeated stints in rehab at WWE's expense. eventually getting clean and showing off an incredible new physique as he continues to work regular independent dates. Powerful stuff. Number 6, Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle had a complex relationship with drugs and alcohol that peppered his illustrious career with a series of unfortunate events. Acrimoniously parting ways from WWE in 2006 due to alleged concerns for his health, Angle quickly signed for TNA and his problems continued to mount. Multiple arrests would follow over a 7-year period, with Kurt caught several times driving under the influence, as well as facing drug possession charges. With his body continuing to deteriorate thanks to an unrelenting in-ring style, Angle faced his final charge in 2017 when another car incident led him into a new rehab program. Overcoming his addictions may have been his biggest victory. Setting up his Angle Strong app, Kurt has used his experiences to help those in similar peril, and celebrated several years free of his demons with a 2017 Hall of Fame induction and a full-time return to screens as the Monday Night Raw GM. He has taken every opportunity to share stories of his struggles and looks, talks and acts like a completely different man that gamely fought through personal problems for the majority of his TNA tenure. Good for you, Kurt. Number 5, Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar has been no stranger to drug controversies in recent times, with the USADA suspension stopping his MMA career after a 2016 test found a banned substance when he fought Mark Hunt at UFC 200. However, he has gone on the record and admitted he experienced huge issues with uncontrolled substances during his first run in WWE between 2002 and 2004. His decision to walk away from the company's main event scene after WrestleMania 20 was grounded in his open disdain for the traditionally tough life of a pro wrestler. Struggling with the travel, hotel living and the wear and tear on his frame, he admitted to a dependency on vodka and Vicodin that almost cost him his life during the infamous 2002 plane ride from hell. Full of booze and pills, Lesnar got into an altercation with the equally inebriated Mr. Perfect that rapidly switched from a light-hearted tussle to a near-fatal fight. According to multiple accounts, Brock slammed Hennig so hard into an emergency exit door that it nearly swung open, endangering everybody on the flight. Walking away from wrestling when he did removed Lesnar from what he hated, affording him a brand new career in the UFC as well as an unlikely part-time return to WWE TV in 2012. And now look at him. Brock wins. Number 4, Jake Roberts. One of the most well-documented declines in the history of the industry, Jake Roberts' problems were highlighted in the 1999 Beyond the Mat movie. Afterwards, many people were worried how much longer the Snake had left. Funding his drug and alcohol dependencies by continuing to work on the indies, Roberts spent the entire 2000s off the wagon, sleepwalking towards an apparent early grave. His body paid a similar toll, and fleeting appearances for WWE and TNA spotlighted this. His issues were felt by fans all over the world and by his peers. At his lowest in 2012, Roberts was basically saved by the one and only Diamond Dallas Page. As highlighted in the gripping Resurrection of Jake the Snake documentary, he was a physical and emotional wreck, but over a period of several years with DDP, Jake lost over 50 pounds, tackled his addictions, and even won a battle with muscular cancer in his knee. Returning to WWE television in 2014 a new man, he beamed and he closed an old school edition of Monday Night Raw by draping a snake over the visibly excited Dean Ambrose. 2 months later, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Number 3, Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy's drawn-out drug addiction was highlighted by 2 crushing lows that both nearly ended his career. Originally released from WWE after refusing to enter drug rehab in 2003, he looked refreshed upon his 2006 return. Sadly, his demons quickly re-emerged. Deciding to take some time off after SummerSlam 2009 to heal his injuries, his house was then subject to a police raid in September. Vicodin, somas and steroids were among the lengthy list of substances found in his property, and after avoiding significant jail time, he was back working for TNA, amazingly, winning their world title just over a year later. The reign would end in one of the most controversial moments in company history. Entering his Victory Road 2011 match with Sting in no condition to perform, Hardy stumbled to the ring and drunkenly yelled at the crowd. A panicked Eric Bischoff rushed to ringside to relay a changed finish, as you could see Sting becoming more and more upset. One Scorpion Deathlock on a tight cover later, the match was over. Jeff's time as a wrestler looked to have gone the same way. Incredibly, this actually aided his recovery. With rehab finally helping him getting clean that summer, Hardy was able to reinvent himself in TNA alongside Brother Matt, eventually finding his way back to WWE. Given how he's currently being used on SmackDown, there's every chance one more world title could even be in his future. Number 2, Scott Hall. Alongside Jake Roberts, a lot of people for a lot of years were worried about Scott Hall. His slide from mid-90s supremacy never seemed to stop, and even in 1998, Hall was facing legal troubles thanks to his increasing reliance on drugs and alcohol. Unable to tackle his addictions, Hall dipped in and out of the industry throughout the 2000s, but repeated relapses ensured his stays with WWE, TNA and ECW were painfully brief. A 2011 ESPN documentary on his descent was a harrowing look at what happened, and it profiled a man who seemed ready to die in front of our eyes. Hall contributed to this too, and even he seemed acceptant of his eventual fate. And then he heard about Jake Roberts' story and everything changed. DDP agreed to take Hall into his home alongside Roberts, taking the former bad guy from a man in a wheelchair to what we know today. Despite slips along the way, Page had worked his magic yet again, gradually guiding Hall to recovery and his own Hall of Fame induction in 2014. In short, DDP is the best. Number 1, Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels' best friend Triple H likes to joke that HBK was an angry young man when referring to the period shortly before his enforced 1998 retirement. Sailing off the rails following his emotionally exhausting run as W Champion in 1996, Michaels hit rock bottom after he bounced off The Undertaker's casket during their Royal Rumble 98 title match that triggered a back injury which threatened to force him to retire forever. His final full year with the company up to that point had been his most controversial too, with his dependencies manifesting for the world to see via multiple slurring promos and a toxic attitude that eventually fed into some of DX's most abhorrent early moments. Barely even a guest on TV in 2001, his appearances during the company's most profitable ever period were scant, and a drug-induced backstage blowout with the game shortly before WrestleMania 17 seemed to mark the end of his relationship with WWE. His son turning 2, along with the realization of where his head was currently at, led Shawn to a spiritual awakening, and by 2002 he was around a year clean and astoundingly able to make an in-ring return. He worked at the very highest level for a further 8 years before he retired at WrestleMania 26. What a story that is.
Hey guys, thanks for making it to the end of the video. Aren't you a star? Don't forget to like, share and subscribe below, and also there's probably more content floating up above my head, so why not check that out as well? Could be a laugh. Probably. 6 out of 10.